Egypt is a desert country. Just to give you an idea of how desert-like it is, 96% of the land is sand or something equally lifeless. Only about 3% of the total area is arable land. Still, the country is confidently called agricultural. Crop farming brings in almost 1/8 of the GDP, and about a quarter of the workforce is involved in this sector. It's clear to everyone, farming here is seriously limited. Still, the population keeps growing, which means Egypt needs more food, more fields, and more crops. And this calls for a challenging process of greening the desert. Turns out Egyptians figured out a while ago that they can turn lifeless, sandy land into fertile ground using waste. What's left over from farming can easily be used to change the desert's color from dry yellow to lush green. How exactly? Let's find out. Let's take a look at the map of Egypt and its endless sands. That's just to get a sense of how impressive Egyptians are when it comes to growing all kinds of crops. Imagine, as of 2022, the country harvested 9.3 million tons of wheat. That's, for instance, more than what Italy and Spain harvested, and they've got way better conditions for it. The situation is just as surprising with other crops. For example, between 2019 and 2023, Egypt harvested nearly 7 million tons of corn on average each year. Rice is another crop the African country has really taken a liking to. Over the same 5 years, the fields yielded an average of 3.7 million tons a year. For Egyptians, this info sounds like a reason to be proud. For other countries, especially those with the same desert-like conditions, it's an example worth following. However, there's no getting around the downsides. Behind the large-scale growing of all kinds of crops hides a problem: waste. Yes, any kind of farming produces waste, but Egypt is one of those countries where this is a real issue because even without straw and cow dung, the country already struggles with trash. The most striking example is Cairo, the capital of Egypt. Over 15,000 tons of solid waste are generated there every day, and people just can't keep up with it. Well, not that they can't. In rich neighborhoods, the average collection rate can reach 90%, but the lower the overall value of the area, the more waste is just left lying on the streets. In the slums, for instance, nobody collects the waste at all, which is why they look the way they do. From city to city, things are pretty much the same. There's waste all over the streets. Now let's add agriculture to all this. For example, in 2017, the fields and livestock pens churned out 33.4 million tons of waste. No question, the situation with farm waste is much better than with what people toss onto the streets of cities every day, since it can be turned into something useful. Say the waste left over after harvesting sugarcane. Egyptians make good use of it to produce heat and electricity at sugar plants. Also in Egypt, they've got pretty good at turning farm waste into biogas, which can then be converted into energy. And you can also just cook on it if you've got the right equipment. So for instance, just recently in 2025, one of the Egyptian ministers said that 1,921 biogas units had been installed, and together they produce 74 million cubic feet of gas per year, which equals 86,000 butane cylinders. At the same time, it was also mentioned that these units are used to make organic fertilizers. With their help, 50,000 tons of useful substances are produced. Some individual startups are working in this area too. One of them, for example, has collected 129,000 units of agricultural waste since it was founded, and after long hours in the lab, came up with a highly effective fertilizer for Egypt's crop fields. There's also rice husk, which in Egypt is used as an energy source for the milling process or as animal feed. Sounds great, but that's not enough. According to one study, 52% of waste is something that's never used again. That is, more than half of everything that's collected in the fields and farms is just burned right where it was gathered. The study also points out that low-efficiency burners are used for disposal, which causes pollution problems. If the waste isn't burned, it's just thrown somewhere, maybe into the nearest ravine or worse, left by a canal where water flows for agriculture or human needs. Another study was conducted in 143 villages representing rural areas of Egypt. For 2 years, the researchers collected all the information, analyzing every type of waste found in these settlements. They didn't find anything surprising. Some waste is used for compost, but it's not done by government bodies or companies. It's individual farmers who handle it. Some of the waste goes to animal feed, and the rest is just dumped on the banks of ditches and canals. Clearly, the problem of large amounts of agricultural waste still needs a solution. All this wheat, corn, rice, and other crop waste has to go somewhere. It'd be ideal to use it in a way that brings maximum benefit to the country and its people. And here comes the SECUM organization, which uses waste like wheat straw to green the desert. No, they're not doing some kind of magic. They're not turning sand into grass with a snap of the fingers. This is a serious approach to transforming the land into fertile soil based on several principles. To start with, of course, the organization uses agricultural waste. In this case, they make compost from it, and they do it right on the spot without waiting for someone somewhere to take care of the task, turn the waste into something useful, and then send it to SECUM. Local experts mix organic materials like wheat, corn, rice, and many other crops waste with cow manure right there on site. The resulting mixture, of course, doesn't reach the desired state immediately. Like with any other process, it takes time. It's said that for this specific project, the compost is brought to the right state within 3 months. Then, over 70 tons of nutrients made from waste are spread out over 2.5 acres of barren land. The participants immediately give an example. For their first 155 acres, they used about 4,500 tons of compost. So, as it's claimed, the very top layer of soil from 0 to 12 inches deep, treated with SECUM, is no longer barren and infertile, but rather a soil rich in organic substances like potassium, phosphate, and nitrogen. At the same time, it's characterized by a wide range of microbial life, which is the main requirement for increased water retention capacity and for making nutrients available to plants. In the next phase of the project, plants are being planted. However, it's not just done randomly, but with some rules in mind. For example, on the barren areas of the project, nitrogen consumption alternates with nitrogen-fixing crops like legumes. This helps to prevent soil depletion. Yes, it's improper farming, ignoring the needs of certain crops that leads to desertification. So in this initiative, SECUM is making sure the soil doesn't end up back in the condition they've been working hard to avoid. As for the water, of course it's here, because without it, there's no way to green the desert by any means, even the most innovative ones. As it's stated, 3 sources are used for the project. First, water is taken from Egypt's main artery, the Nile. Second, water distributed by the government is used, meaning tap water. And third, wastewater. Yes, saving water in Egypt is mandatory for everyone, so at SECUM, after treatment, wastewater is used again for irrigating plants. SECUM helps Egypt save money by independently filtering its wastewater. On the company's farms, there are stations where a mix of 84 aerobic and anaerobic bacteria, such as yeast, lactobacilli, and photosynthetic species, is used to clean the water. They reduce both the smell and the amount of sludge. The company claims that sludge reduction can be as high as 50%. It should be noted that in this project, irrigation is usually done in a way that doesn't waste massive amounts of water. Here in Egypt, where 96% of the land is desert, water is a precious resource that needs to be conserved, which the project participants understand perfectly well. For this reason, circular irrigation systems are used. These structures rotate around their axis, watering the assigned area. So, does the project succeed in greening the desert using all these methods? The most active greening of the Egyptian desert within the project started in 2019. That's when a large amount of compost from waste was first used along with circular irrigation. As of the end of 2024, all this led to the creation of 5 farms by SECUM in Egypt, and the total area of land that's been transformed from infertile to fertile has reached 1,790 acres. Here's what one of the SECUM farms looks like, for instance. Sure, from this satellite image, you wouldn't guess that greening's in full swing, but you can already see a few of those circular irrigation spots marked by green patches among the endless Egyptian sand. At the same time, you can notice that there are plenty of areas prepared for growing crops with compost and center pivot irrigation. There are also fields that don't have center pivot irrigation. They use a different approach to watering the plants, but that doesn't stop them from thriving thanks to the compost from waste. In 2021, it was announced that cotton, peanuts, jojoba, dates, and mint have been harvested from the project's farmland. Hibiscus was also harvested. It was picked at the parent farm near Cairo. Basil and lemongrass also grow on the project's farms, and it's said they could be harvested multiple times. SECUM also carried out a large-scale planting of rather unexpected crops for desert lands, chamomiles. In November 2021, chamomile was sown almost everywhere. 4 circular sprinklers started irrigating about 200 fedans or 207 acres of chamomile, and here they even use wheat waste to grow wheat. Yes, as part of the SECUM project, they couldn't avoid growing this crop since Egypt is currently facing a big shortage of it. In 2023, the project participants harvested their first wheat crop from a 52-acre area, which they had previously composted using wheat waste. Yeah, it's not that much because it was an experimental setup. However, in the end, they collected about 3.6 tons from 2.5 acres, which is reportedly a very satisfying result for a first try. Besides, it's also a useful solution because wheat, from an agricultural perspective, helps control weeds and improve soil quality. And also, growing wheat is profitable. The shortage and price increase of this crop create perfect conditions to make some money. Actually, that's exactly what the participants of SECM are doing. They plan to continue growing wheat in the future and sow even more land with it in the coming years. They'll make money and provide the scarce food supply for Egypt. Overall, it's perfect. Of course, the main and standout thing being done within the SECM project is turning desert lands into green agricultural fields. But that's not all. Far from it. Where the soil turns from infertile to fertile, not only plants appear, but animals as well. Most often, the greener the area, the more its biodiversity, which can easily be seen on SECM farms, which not long ago were nothing but desert land. On one of the farms, frogs and insects showed up, and that's just the ones the participants managed to snap a picture of. It's claimed that over the years of its work transforming the land, the SECM project has created a habitat for animals like foxes, hedgehogs, lizards, chameleons, mice, snails, rats, as well as various reptiles and birds, and this is just the wild species. Desert areas have become fertile, which means livestock farming can now be done, and indeed, the project's farms are engaged in this. It's claimed that on these fertile lands, cattle are raised, living freely in open spaces with one limitation, a roof that protects the cows from the scorching sun of the Egyptian Sahara. You don't need to bring any food, everything's available right there. What's left after harvesting corn, clover, soybeans, plus cotton seeds and wheat bran? In short, SECM managed to create a varied diet for farm animals, even in the desert, and they're pretty grateful for it. The average milk yield per cow per day is about 6 gallons. There are also sheep. They're kept on the farms of the project. There's plenty of food, so these animals are also grateful in their own way. According to SECM, in 2011, they managed to gather 1 ton of wool from all the sheep in the project. In addition to what we've already listed, the SECM farms are also a field for experiments. There is, for example, a plant like this, Azadirachta India, neem, margosa, neem tree, or Indian lilac. Anyway, it has many names. No matter what you call it, the fruits and seeds are a source of the incredibly useful oil, which is a powerful pesticide. This property of neem was especially appreciated in the SECM project, so the participants started using the oil to fight various pests. The participants of the project especially emphasized that thanks to this extract, it's possible to completely ditch harmful chemicals that affect the soil, plants, air, and people. Egypt also has a lot of sun. It sounds like the perfect solution for solar panels. And in fact, that's exactly what people working on desert greening projects realize, which is why these SECM farms are experimenting with solar systems. They don't have many devices that could use solar power converters, so the focus is on the most important thing: irrigation. Each of these center pivot irrigation systems on farms is equipped with solar panels, which help solve the energy-intensive irrigation problem. Plus, the pumps run on solar power. Plus, the project is also actively promoting the idea of zero emissions. Can't do without that. Of course, solar irrigation helps with that too. However, something's still missing in this project to make it a solution that satisfies all ecologists and desert greening enthusiasts. Maybe trees? Egypt has long been trying to grow forests right in the desert sands. For example, there was the Serapeum Forest Project, which was introduced in 1998 and then called a huge success in 2014. Initially, the area was just a desert with the governorate of Ismailia nearby on the outskirts of Cairo. Dryness, sand, well, you get the idea, and 96% of Egypt is like that. 40,000 locals lived peacefully in all these conditions, contributing to the local landscape with the daily production of tons of wastewater. Then in the 90s, Egyptian scientists started working with German ones, which eventually transformed the local area from dry and lifeless to a forest that stretches over just a little more than 494 acres. It might seem that creating a forest in the desert conditions would require huge amounts of water, but no, they use drip irrigation here. That's already a significant saving. Plus, the large volumes of wastewater are additionally recycled. They're used for irrigating the trees growing in the forest. There are more than 20 green plantations like this in Egypt, meaning the country is actively working not just on farming in the desert, but also on turning its lifeless areas into green forested zones. Second is contributing to this as well. A project called Farm for Climate was launched at the main farm, during which 400,000 new trees are being planted. Back in 2016, there was a news report that the project had bought an 11-mile desert valley near the city of Minya to build one of its farms. Then the participants thought trying to grow anything in the middle of the desert was dangerous, as sandstorms could destroy all the plants, but if they planted trees, that would be a completely different matter. In the end, the company, together with Austrian researchers, planted 2 rows of Casuarina trees, for which they didn't even have to create new fertile soil. It had already been formed by the chamomile and sunflower fields planted earlier as part of the project. To the surprise of many, including ours, Seckham says the trees grew almost 6 feet in just 1 year. Well, this was to be expected from a project that's literally built on remarkable things: the amazing use of waste to transform desert lands and the amazing breeding of animals in places where biodiversity seemed almost impossible. And all this with the efficient use of wastewater. In general, the Seckham project benefits not just Egypt, but the whole world, which can take these developments and apply them to areas with similar conditions.